So the fact that we don't have all this mobility, running up and down the stairs, running on top of the sound system in the back and the front, you need complete mobility. You need something that's light. So the actual thickness of the bass is, possibly 1.5 inches, 2 inches. Extra hard wood, obviously, so that it can take a lot of beating, because you're always running into studs and things, getting the guitar beating. And obviously we can't use chords, because, you just get tangled up. If the hall has an extremely high ceiling, then I'll even bring into play some Marshall tops, the 100 series, that gives you a kind of a guitar edge. For instance, for Madison Square Garden, I'll use 5 tops. I'll use three Ampegs with level about 6, mids about 6. The bass would be down to about 4, and the highs would be up to around 3/4. So you're just getting, that kind of thing. And the Marshall would be about half on everything, the 2 Marshalls. And you have to realize at the outset that any horn enclosure cabinet will give you extra bass, because you've got space for any sound to travel on. So you have to compensate by putting on more highs, because where you would put an Ampeg SVT naturally on 6 in bass, you get the same effect by putting the bass on 4 in a folded horn enclosure. You're playing for Anaheim Stadium or something like that, you are lost unless you use the entire setup, 10. I have 15 actually, 5 that are standby in the back, that are all hooked up and ready to go. All you do is just interchange the cabinets with the speakers. I'm sorry, the cabinets with the amps. Now, of course, that's not saying that the sound system doesn't do its job. It does, but when you're talking about the coverage that a sound system has, too bad people can't see this as well as read this. Here's the sound system on one side. Here's the sound system on the other side. Here's the front of the stage. You've got a crisscrossing effect. And the people up front here, the first 10 rows, are blind. They will hear the vocals, because the vocals have a peculiar kind of frequency where you'll understand what's going on. But you won't hear bass, you won't hear drums, not the same way. It travels too far out. Guitars you'll wind up hearing, but you'll wind up hearing natural stage sound the first 10 rows, easily on the level that the sound system is for the first 10 rows. The worst thing in the world is you buy front row tickets, you think you get the best seats in the house. You're not. You're getting a blind spot, because it's like put 2 ice cream cones next to each other, and you'll find out that there's a big space right in the middle. And if this is the front of the stage, you're right in the blind spot.
Right. Do you use any pedals or
nothing?
Fixings? Nothing.
No, just hammer the bass up to 10. And when I'm playing, it's on 10. When I'm not, it's on off. And that has to do with the singular, the special quality of the music. It's that kind of music. I don't recommend doing that for Stanley Clarke. His music is more complex. You're talking about different, polyrhythms and all this, and Polly Bergen and all this kind of stuff. And different music demands different treatment. And different instruments too. I'm sure that Kramer or whatever other bassists use is perfect for their use. I just don't understand using a Fender Precision bass in a baseball stadium. The only thing that happens is both live and in the studio, I have 2 channels to work with. A direct, which goes directly from the bass to the board, and an amp sound, which could be any number of microphones. But you're really talking about 2 different controls, 2 different sounds.
Right.
So that if one is too dirty, and you really don't understand what's going on, you can combine it with a cleaner sound, and then you get that.
We experiment with different kinds of basses and amps in the studio?
It always depends on the song, of course, but since most of the songs had the same flavor, the same kind of approach, heavier, loud rock and roll, then the bass didn't move too very far, because I wanted to be able to be recognized. Hey, that's Gene Simmons. So, you do not win the circus bass player awards 2 years in a row by being Stanley Clarke. I mean, you really have to figure out who it is that you're trying to appeal to. I'm not Stanley Clarke. I don't do the things that Stanley Clarke does on bass, because if you're 15 years old, you not only don't you understand what's going on, you don't care. I don't care how well your fingers move. I want to be able to, if I hear a riff on a bass, I want to be able to walk away and say boom, 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 and go home, pick up my guitar, and be able to duplicate it and say, God, I can be just like him too.
What kind of pick do you use?
The picks. Not the nose-picking variety picks, but the picks I use for my bass and for guitar playing is a medium pick, and it's, I forgot the name of the company, but on both sides, on one side it says Gene Simmons, on the other side it says Kiss, so the brand name isn't as important to you when I throw it out into the audience as the fact that it's got my name on it. So you can take it home and show it to your friends and say, look.
Right. Is it an oversized pick?
No, regular size pick. The one thing I do prefer when I do more sloppier numbers like God of Thunder, where I drool blood in my, and I get messy with sweat, is I like Herco picks because they have grooves in them, and that even if your hands are full of blood or sweat or whatever other wet things run around, you have something to kind of grasp onto because it's got teeth. So Herco picks will be substituted in midway during the show, but for when your hands are dry and you can run around and do stuff, I use these white picks with my names on them, because when people see your hands in a kind of a semi-clenched fist position and they can't tell what you're doing, they usually can't tell because the color of the pick is such that it just blends into your arm. So you look like a spastic because you kind of hold your hand like that playing guitar. And if people don't play guitar in the audience, they don't know what you're doing. So you get a white pick so that people can see, oh, that's something he's holding in his hand. People assume a lot of things playing guitar,
You mentioned before that you will tend to duplicate whatever the bass drum is doing.
Feel-wise. And especially once there's a beat, it's a pattern that gets repeated later on. So if you do any kind of variation while the thing is going on, when you come back to it, you go back down to the simple thing. So people say, yeah, that's right, I heard him play that before, and I like it now, because now I know what he did before. Rock and roll is always based on repetition and coming back to the hook, if it's the hook of the song, or if it's the hook of the pattern that you're playing, or,
Do you play many chords when you play?
Yeah, there are often when Ace and Paul go into harmony lead songs like that every guitar player knows in the world. Songs like King of the Nighttime World and Detroit Rock City, they go into harmony guitar leads, and I'll switch to chords, usually the 1-5. Is it 1-5 or 1-4? I think it's 1-5 kind of figure. So if you're talking about an A chord, I would hit A and E together and bar them.
Right. So 5th fret on the E string and 7th fret on the.
And then when you're talking about the end pattern, if the end pattern is an E, I'd hit the entire E chord. In other words, I'd hit an E, B, and then E octave, and also keep the low E open.
Right.
So you have low E open, octave E on the A string. The next string is the D string. I press the B on the D string, and the high E on the G string. So you've got a big, big full sound. Now, if you're playing a Fender Precision bass out of an acoustic amp, you will not understand a single thing. It'll just sound like Angeline's pancakes. There won't be any substance to it at all. It'll just be all fluff. So people like Jack Bruce long ago realized that if they use Marshall amps, they can play chords. Especially, he'd have to play chords, because if you've got a guitar player, you've got to fill up that sound.
Was he an influence on you?
Oh, yes, very much so. Stole all kinds of things from that man. Felix Pappalardi, too. Mountain more than Cream, though. Because Mountain was even simpler than Cream. And I couldn't play very well.